First question really is, how many of you are likely to set a New Year's resolution in about 6 weeks' time? The chances are you will set some goals around things related to diet, drinking more water, or drinking more generally, getting to bed earlier, spending more time with family, and so on and so forth. But what typically happens is we set these resolutions, and probably less than 10% of people are successful with those resolutions, and they certainly probably won't go past the end of January. Now, what I want to talk to you about in the next 18 or so minutes is the method and the approach that I have worked on over about 25 years, working with people's goal setting, to show how we can maybe make goals on a daily basis or a weekly basis, not just waiting for January the 1st, but also how to make sure that those resolutions actually become action, actually be something that we can do something about, something that we want to do, we actually make it happen and make personal changes. Because what typically happens is that if you're like me, I've done this, I'm not always the best goal setter, I've learned gradually by working on my own approach and methods, but we might keep churning these same goals and resolutions over year after year and not getting anywhere. And one of the issues I find is that people are not always setting resolutions around things that they really like or they really want. How to be more confident, how to be happier, how to feel better about yourself, how to improve your relationships, how to get better grades, how to maybe be less stressed, enhance your resilience, things that really matter to us and things that we really like. And if we really like them and we set goals on them, we're more likely to be successful. So often what we also do is we set very vague goals or vague resolutions. So I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to look like Beyonce within 6 months. I'm going to exercise. But we don't actually be specific enough about what it is we're trying to do. And that's one of the key problems. When we're setting goals, goals need to be specific. The work of Locke and Latham and their goal setting theory shows that one of the key features of goal setting is that things are specific. We know exactly what it is that we're going to do. And they also need to be difficult and challenging. If we set things that are too easy, then it's not motivational. So a lot of the time as well, we may embark on personal development journeys, we might read self-help books, we might go on training programs and workshops, and we get sprayed with some concepts that people hope the magic wand will wave all this sprinkling dust of wonderful things that we're going to go away and transform and be something else. But most of the time we don't transfer that learning. And again, the approach that I'm going to talk to about with you is how we can transfer that learning and make things actually happen. And if we don't use the kind of process I'm talking about, we don't set proper goals, it's just a wish. And that's what a lot of us do at the start of the year or when we start a new job. We make a wish about how we think we want things to be, but we don't actually make them properly into goals so that it will happen for us. One of the things my work involves is helping people set goals around things that are actually going to make us grow. I've got things that I've written on this that you're welcome to read about, but people actually growing in terms of their capacity, their resilience, how they manage stress, how they achieve the grades that they want to in their work and studies. So it's about growth, and a lot of the goals that we typically set ourselves, or the resolutions, aren't really about personal growth. I think sometimes what happens is we're too scared to set goals on things that are personally challenging for us. We're a bit between a rock and a hard place. It's harder to stay as we are, but it's too scary to set a goal that will be difficult to do, and we're scared of failing at that. So I just want to give you an example of something that set me thinking about this whole thing about specificity and how we don't always set proper goals. Years ago, I was teaching in a college. I was teaching A-level psychology to adults in an evening class. And one week I did non-verbal communication, body language. Following week, I came back and a woman said to me, "Thank you, I got my job this week, a promotion because of you." I thought, "I've not even seen you this week. How could I have helped you with your promotion?" And basically, she'd gone away, and she used to have these performance reviews with the manager, and nothing ever changed. So this time, she decided she'd do some mirroring, which we'd covered the week before. So when he leant back, she leant back. When he sat with it to one side, she sat to one side. When he crossed his leg, which is a bit hard on this mat, she crossed her leg. She got a promotion. Now, whether or not it was the mirroring that actually led to that promotion, we don't know. But the issue is, for me, she felt that she was in control. She felt by making some behavioural changes that she was in control of that situation. And that's what I think made a difference. And at that point, I thought, well, this is great. We can give these sort of psychological concepts away. If people put them into practice, they're more likely to be successful. So mirroring was a powerful concept for her. Another time, fast forward a few more years, and I was realising that often people didn't give correct feedback and help people set their goals. So I was working with research and development teams, And this particular guy, lovely, soft-hearted, a really lovely guy. If you were going to be managed by anybody, you'd want him in your team, you'd want him managing you, because he was a really kind, empathic person. But they kept saying to him, we need you to be more assertive, Trevor. Now, poor Trevor didn't know what that meant. You might be someone who somebody said, you need to be more assertive, or you need to be a bit sharper, or you need to be less stressed. But it doesn't actually mean anything to you. So when we actually delved into it, what it was that Trevor didn't manage the more loquacious members when they had team meetings. So they often went off the agenda, or people would talk for too long. And that was quite specific. He could then start to work on that and do something about it. The other thing, thinking back to Susan Cain's work on introversion, is I also found that when I did some personal development courses here, teaching these at the start with MBA students, they'd go away, set personal goals, and come back and the goals weren't successful. And what they were doing was they were setting these goals and overshooting them. So extroverts were self-censoring. They were going, oh, I know I talk too much, so actually I'm just going to stop talking. I'll have a meeting and I just won't talk. So what was happening was people were going, are you ill? Are you not well? What's wrong with you? As if you're an extrovert, you'll know that if you do that, people often think that you've got some kind of illness. So they weren't setting proper goals and they weren't making changes that were effective or helping anyone else. So the key thing is you need to know exactly what your goal is, but you need to actually be specific about it. So, I mean, if you had goals on a football pitch and they kept moving, it'd be very confusing. So it's actually knowing what that goal is. What is it that you're shooting at? What is it you're trying to do? And the framework I'm going to talk you through now is actually helping us do that. What I found is, and what I discovered with this extroversion issue of overshooting the goal and not quite doing it properly, is that people needed to write these goals down. And the act of writing goals down helps us get clarity. It makes us accountable. It makes these goals real. So writing them down makes all the difference. There's people across the world all doing work on writing goals down. Myself, somebody called Morisano at Toronto, Shippers at Rotterdam University, and we're all finding the same. The power of the written goal is what levers success and change. So, and this is not just writing any old goal down, this is actually reflecting as well. So thinking about it, what are your feelings around it, what's happening, what was the impact of that goal, how will you measure it, and so on and so forth. So reflective goal setting is what I want to present to you as something for you to use. It's based on an idea, but it's actually a framework, a structure for making things change. It's partly for reflection, it's partly goal setting, and the crux is this writing things down. So there's the framework, and I'm going to go through each stage. So enhancing self-awareness. This is basically where what we're doing is saying, who am I? What kind of person am I? What is it about me that I need to do something about? And this might not necessarily be something corrective, like, well, I talk too much, or I'm too stressed. It could be, I don't contribute enough of what I want to say. There's more of this that I should be doing. So it's about saying, how do I know? What do school reports say about me? What does feedback say about me? What has managers said about me? What matters to me? What are my values? What goals should I set myself that match the values and things that are important to me and others around me? So this is identifying things about you. Now I'll just share an example where this is very important. We often set the wrong goal and we often create the wrong environments. And as Susan Cain was saying about what was in her suitcase, in my case, all my life I've created these little writing spaces where suddenly I'm going to write that book. I'm going to be able to sit in that quiet space and I'm going to create wonderful things. So that's one of them. That's the one out in my summer house. It's very cosy. Unfortunately, there's that in my summer house, and when I often go in there, the dogs follow me in and I fall asleep on that. And what I realise when I do my self-awareness is, ever since I was little, I'd stand at the gate waiting for somebody to talk to. I'm an extrovert, and I work better when I'm working with other people. So I've recently set up a writing club with someone else here at Loughborough, and we get in the room and we write together. We may occasionally chat, and for extroverts that's obviously leaves a lot of control. But basically, just hearing noises from other people and having others around me, we write far more, those of us that need that environment. So if you're going to set a goal, it's understanding you as a person, not what everyone else is doing and how others do goals, but how you need it for you. Then you still have to write that down. Log these thoughts and reflections that you have. Stage 2 is when we actually say, well, what goal do we want to work on? Because what happens is when you do self-awareness work, you might have a range of goals. You seem to have loads of goals suddenly popping out that you think I could work on, I could choose any of those. And you're at the top of the ladder then because you've done the self-awareness work, but you've got all of these things potentially to choose. And it's important then that you might talk to others, ask other people's advice, get some feedback on your goal choices. One lad, he was on a course here, and he was working at a local supermarket. And he said, oh, it's awful. They put me on the self-service checkout. If anybody's ever been on one of those, they're horrific. They're designed to cause stress for everybody. So he would be there at the self-service checkout. I mean, he'd had tins of food thrown at him. He'd had baskets kicked at him. He'd been abused, and he couldn't understand it. So I said to him, well, he said, I want to work on a goal around this. So I said, well, tell me what you do when you're at the self-service checkout. So I said, what, you stand there? Yeah. I said, and what do you do? Tap the number in when there's a problem. I said, and do you speak to these people? No. Very, very strong introvert. He said, I just stand there. So I said, you don't even talk to the people that are getting a bit worked up. So we worked on how he could set a goal around creating more rapport with the people that were struggling with the self-service checkout. So actually saying to them, you know, they're a nuisance, aren't they? Don't worry, that's what I'm here for. Doesn't matter how many times I have to help you, that's what I'm here for. He never got hit again. He never had anything thrown at him again. But they are stressful places, and I try to avoid them. The other thing is I had a chap on a management course, and he was very chatty, and he found that he could never land a message because he'd talked too much around it. So he felt his messages weren't having great impact. And once he moved into management, he felt he needed to be a bit more, had more credibility. So he was working on saying less and making more succinct points, and he was successful at that. But again, what you need to be doing is writing this down. Now, stage 3 is when you visualize your successful behaviors. What would it look like if you were doing this better? How would you be feeling? How would other people be responding to you? So if in the guy's case, when he's landing a more succinct message, would people be listening? Would they be looking really attentive? Would they follow up the points that you've made? And so on and so forth. You might also, if you can't imagine yourself doing it, because this is the bit that helps your self-efficacy, that you believe you can do it, you may actually engage in role models, imagining other people that do it well. How do they actually do it? What behaviour do they actually do that you could maybe copy? You can also look at self-help books as well. But the key here is that you're trying to imagine the gap between where you are now and where you want to be. And it's identifying the techniques, behaviours, tools and so on that will help you across that gap. What is the performance gap between how you do things now and where you want to be? And that's when you can start to identify the measures and the techniques. And it also helps you work out how you will know when you're progressing. What will it look like if you're doing this better? How will others be responding to you if you're being more assertive or more confident? Or if you're managing stress better, how will you feel? I had a student once who was able to sit in a wash and brush up after a module, in a module that I taught. She'd handed a coursework in the week before. This was a wash and brush up. She'd always suffered with stress and got really worked up in exams. She was able to come to the wash and brush up even though it had nothing to do with the grade anymore, and she had an exam the next day. And she said, I can't believe I'm sat here when it's actually adding nothing to my coursework, but I'm so chilled I can sit here and enjoy this session even though I've got an exam tomorrow. And that's achievement. Again, writing and reflecting about these experiences and your thoughts. Stage 4 is creating a goal statement. And this is when you're actually writing it down. What is it you're going to do? Why do you want to do it? How are you going to attempt to measure it? What specific techniques are you going to use? And this is where it's important. 2 chaps in a course I've just been teaching recently both said, I want to improve my fitness. They both went away. One came back and said, not only did I do the 30 minutes 4 times a week that I set out to do, that I'd written down, but I've done 7 days a week. And I'm feeling fantastic. The other guy said, I've not done anything. One had written it down and said exactly what he was going to do and transcended that. The other had just said out loud, I want to be fitter. That's the difference. And I'm sure a lot of you here have made those same mistakes. So writing it down is the magical ingredient. Stage 5 is when we put it into practice. And this is saying, okay, here's my goal, here's what I want to do. Where can I try it out? Now, it might be that you have lots of opportunities to try it out, but it's also might be the case that you haven't in the next short, period of time. So another chap I had on a module, he said, I want to work on something, but I've just broke my leg and can't go into work, and this is a piece of work around how I manage others. So I said, well, okay, who are you going to spend most of your time with over the period while you're off with your broken leg? He said, my wife. I said, so okay, if you were to work on a goal area related to your wife, what would it be? She said, well, she always says, I never listen to her. I said, what would people say at work? That I don't listen to them. I said, okay, you can practice listening at home with your wife, and hopefully what you do is you transfer it to the workplace as well. It's getting the opportunity to try things out. Another situation was I had a young student who struggled to focus and really found it hard to stick to things he set out to do. He didn't like routine, he didn't like monotony and being bored, things that we've heard about already today. So what he decided was he'd never learned to play the piano, but over a 3-month period he decided he would set himself a goal of learning to play the piano where he could focus and concentrate, and his ultimate would be to play Fairy Tale of New York at St Pancras Station on one of those pianos on Christmas Eve. And he handed in a video diary of his attempts, and sometimes you weren't quite sure what he was playing. But on Christmas Eve, he sat there at St Pancras, very nervous, and a lady came up and said, "This was my husband's favourite Christmas song," and she was crying. And she said, "It sounds beautiful," and she stood with him while he played it, crying. But all the same, she recognised it, which was the most important thing, and also it made someone else's day. When we practice our goals and try them out, it not only affects us, it also has a wonderful effect on everyone else. So there's the model, the 5 stages, and I'd love to encourage you to use it. As I say, I've used it with hundreds of people. Lots of great outcomes from using it in this particular way. So they're not vague goals, they're actually real goals thought through carefully. One of the things about it is that you might not always create perfect outcomes straight away. A student I had on a module was desperate to get a particular job, and every job she'd been going for had said the same. We don't think you've got leadership potential, you don't listen to anybody from what we've seen in the experiences with group work and so on in the assessment day, and you don't seem to show any empathy. So she set 2 specific goals on improving her listening and her empathy. She went along for the job of her dreams, assessment centre in the morning, interview in the afternoon. And she said, "I was trying really hard, but it all went to pot. As soon as I started getting involved, I forgot all my goals." In the afternoon, the interviewer said to her, "We have to admit, we're not that impressed so far. We can't see evidence of your leadership potential. We don't think you listen very well. We don't think you show empathy for others' views." And instead of getting defensive, she said, "You know what? I agree, but let me tell you the goals I've set on that recently and what I'm doing about it." And she got the job. Because they said we're not used to people being so self-aware and honest, but knowing how to work on these things. So what I would say to you is, I'd like you to think about setting a goal, ask from today. It might be how you're going to maintain some kind of fun element in your life of something you keep putting off, something about work-life balance. It might be about having more solitude, taking nicer walks, making sure you don't miss the bluebells next year when they come out. But it's that whole thing, or it might be something working with a charity or putting something back into the environment, back into a charity of your choice, something that makes you feel good and benefits others. But what I'd really like you to do is not wait until the new year to set your personal goals. Think about goals as something that you just do as part of your whole process of living, okay? But please write them down. Okay, thank you very much.